Welcome to Cayuga Community College's television studio for the second in a series of 7 debates this month involving candidates for Cayuga County Legislature, Auburn Mayor, and Auburn City Council. I'm Jeremy Boyer, editor of the Citizen newspaper and auburnpub.com, and I'll be your moderator for these forums. These debates are recorded and produced by students at the college and broadcast in cooperation with Time Warner Cable, Verizon Fios, and Auburn Regional Access Media, and posted for viewing on demand at auburnpub.com. Today's program features candidates in the race for Cayuga County Legislature District 10, a City of Auburn district that covers much of the northwest section of the city. The candidates for this race include an incumbent and a challenger. Incumbent Joseph Bennett, running this year on the Democratic line as well as the Working Families line, won this seat in 2011 with an election victory over then incumbent Peter Tortorici. He then faced a legal challenge from Republicans on the legislature who argued his position as an employee at the community college made him ineligible for the seat, an issue that ultimately was resolved more than a year later, and he's been serving in that role since. Mr. Bennett's challenger this year is Jennifer Young on the Republican, Independence, and Reform Party lines. She's a newcomer to running for elected office. The county legislature is a 15-person body that is currently comprised of 7 Republicans, 7 Democrats, and 1 conservative, although because of the weighted voting system, the GOP still has a voting power edge over the Democrats. The base yearly pay for a sitting county legislator is $10,100. The rules for these debates are simple. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes for an opening statement and 2 minutes for a closing statement. The initial answers to all the questions can also be up to 2 minutes long, and any rebuttals are then allowed 1 minute. The candidates took part in a coin toss earlier to determine the order in which they'll be giving their statements, and as a result, we'll start tonight's program with Mr. Bennett. Mr. Bennett, welcome, and you can now start your 2-minute opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Boyer. Thank you, Mr. Boyer, the Citizen, Cayuga Community College Telecom Department for hosting this forum. My name is Joe Bennett, and I'm a lifelong resident of District 10. Currently, as District 10 legislator, I have fought for the residents of District 10, the city, and county. I have and will continue to listen to the concerns of and suggestions of all the residents regarding the city, county, and legislative body. I will continue to work for economic growth and consolidation of public services. I will continue to lead by example. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett, and now we'll go to Ms. Young for her 2-minute opening statement.
Thank you. I'd also like to thank Jeremy and Cayuga Community College and the Citizen for having me here. My name is Jennifer Young. I am 32 years old. I am also a lifelong resident of Auburn and have lived in District 10 for most of my life. And I am running for office because I would like to see change in the area. I think we have a huge potential for growth here economically and other areas as well. So I would like to bring a new voice and a new vision to the county legislature. I am a registered nurse by profession. I work in the IT department here at Auburn Community Hospital full-time. I am married and have 3 sons, and I am also a community volunteer at First Love Ministries here in Auburn. I am a youth director and also help out with other various services at the church. So I'm accustomed to serving, and I see the county legislature as another opportunity to serve the community. So I hope to be elected this fall.
All right, well, thank you both for those statements and for joining us tonight to answer some questions. I'm going to start and mostly be going back and forth, rotating the questions. But I'm going to start with a question for Ms. Young, and it's on the county budget. And the question that I have specifically is with the county budget situation right now, the administrator has proposed a budget that would go over the 1.25% state tax cap, and now legislators are debating whether that's the appropriate course of action to go over that, stay under it. If they stay under it, then do they pay for that by taking money out of the fund balance or by cutting costs and possibly cutting jobs? So the question that I have for Ms. Young and then for Mr. Bennett is, where on this give and take with tax levy, job cuts, and fund balance use would you like to see the final budget come out?
I definitely don't want to see any job cuts. However, I'm not in favor of exceeding a tax cap this year. This would be the second year in a row that we would do that. I know last year only 6 counties exceeded the tax cap and we were one of them. So to do that for the second year in a row would be detrimental to the county. I think the common taxpayers would see that as a fault and possibly blame the legislature for not using the funds appropriately. So I would like to see some cuts where it's applicable, and hopefully look for other opportunities to contribute toward the fund balance.
Mr. Bennett, this question on the budget.
On the budget, I too will not vote to override the tax cap this year. I would like to see us use some of the fund balance to minimize the tax increase. And if we have to have reduction of manpower or services, I'd like to see it through attrition. And I do believe that we need to further our economic growth and create more income for the county.
On last year's budget, Mr. Bennett, how did you vote on that particular budget?
I believe I voted for the tax cap increase and stuff because we had to try to get it within balance, and we were slowly making progress on it.
Gotcha. And Ms. Young, knowing, if you can go back, and it's obviously easier for you to do this in hindsight, but, would you have supported going over the tax cap last year given the circumstances that were in effect?
I think that's very difficult to say, having not been a part of the legislature and not having been able to review, the line items in detail and to see where cuts were made, where they could have been. I obviously never want to see the taxpayers burden any more than they need to be. I think the state put the tax cap in effect for a reason, and considering most counties have been able to deal with it and not exceed it, I would hope that we would never do the same. But without knowing, I can't say that I would have voted one way or the other.
Understood. A question first for Mr. Bennett, but for both of you. One of the issues with the legislature's budget over the years has been the process and how long it takes to really get into the hard decisions that need to be made. I guess a question that I'd have on two fronts for Mr. Bennett. Can you evaluate the budget formation process in terms of, is it transparent enough, first of all, to the public as far as getting information out to the public? And secondly, is it enough of a priority throughout the whole year as opposed to in the last quarter of the year when it's time to get it done?
As far as the second part, I believe a priority of the legislature, of the majority of legislators, it is a priority to start early in the season, early in the year, to minimize I guess you would call it the cram sessions, which are going to start tomorrow night. And I would like to see that we extend this and keep dialogue going sooner. And Ms. Sinclair did a very good job of getting it to us fairly early this year. And then let's see, what was the
on transparency, just in terms of getting the information to the public about what's in the budget and what it means to them?
I would like to see it put out there a little bit, I don't know, more on our website. Now I see we're starting to put it on our website and stuff, the county website. But I also would like to see more of the public to show up to our meetings. It is very disappointing to see, on the average, maybe 10 to 15 people of the public to be there. Thank you.
And Ms. Young, the same question for you on transparency and process.
I actually agree. I think that it is fairly transparent. I've looked at the notes myself online, and I've attended some of the meetings, and I have noticed as well that there's not very many people usually from the public that attend. So I think that would be great as well. And I don't know how to do that. Everyone's so busy, so it's hard to make the county a priority for the typical public. I understand that. But I think the county has done a good job of being transparent in their processes. And as far as making the budget a priority, I definitely think it should be looked at year-round. I know the legislature has so much that they're looking at, the committees, the subcommittees, they have so many responsibilities. So I can understand where that gets lost throughout the year, but I think that it should be more of a priority than waiting till September or October.
Okay. The next question I'm going to put to Ms. Young first, and it has to do with job creation and economic development. Cayuga County is currently paying $350,000 a year in a line item on the budget toward economic development, and that helps fund the Cayuga Economic Development Agency, which provides support to IDAs and does a lot of recruiting and marketing, gets involved in the regional economic development process that's out there with the state as well. My question for both of you, but start with Ms. Young, is evaluate how well we're doing this economic development at the county level, and is that $350,000 money well spent at this point?
I do believe it's money well spent. I think that they are doing a good job. I definitely think that there's room for growth and there's a lot of potential in the area. But I do think it's worth funding at this time. Again, I'm not currently a legislator, so I haven't been able to review in detail, line by line, what they've done with the money or what's in progress. But just from what I've seen from the standpoint of a typical citizen, I do see improvement in the area. And I think that growing the economy here in Cayuga County is of utmost importance. I think that there is huge room for more opportunities for families. I think that we need to appeal to families more businesses, more things to keep the kids off the street. So I think they're doing a good job, and I think that they should continue to look for those types of opportunities.
And Mr. Bennett, same question for you.
Yes, I believe Andrew Fish is doing fine for the economic development and stuff, and I too think the money is well spent, but I also would like to see consolidation between the county and the city as both economic development departments. And right now the county is in a win-lose situation where we ended up with the Cayuga Milk Ingredients plant, and now all of a sudden in today's paper, plus a while back there, we're having places closed in the mall, Finger Lakes Mall, we're losing jobs there. So I think we need to put a little more effort into bringing the economy back here to the county and hopefully bring some jobs in.
Ms. Young, just to follow up on what Mr. Bennett said, what are your thoughts on the city and county combining their economic and planning departments?
I think that where it's reasonable to do so, absolutely. I don't think that the county can do it without the city, and I don't think the city can do it without the county. We should be working together as residents that love where we live. So, I can't say that in every aspect of development the two can work together, without fully investigating each case and, each effort at growth. But I think it would be a great idea if we could come together and work together for the benefit of the county.
Well, that leads me to another question that I'm going to ask first of Mr. Bennett. Can you evaluate the relationship that exists today between the county and the city government? And if anything, how can it be improved if there is room for improvement?
The relationship now lately has been very favorable between the city and the county. We had some change on both sides as councilors, as in legislators, that always seemed like they wanted just to make waves and not work together. Both the city and the county are working well together, as in the indication of the motor pool that we're working on right now. And I'd like to see them expand more with either like the civil service or some other departments like that.
Gotcha. Ms. Young, you have any thoughts on how the city and county have worked together?
I have heard some of the efforts to combine the motor pool, talks about combining the public works facilities. So, it sounds to me that they're at least making an attempt. And I definitely am in favor of that. A big concern of mine in District 10 is the condition of the sidewalks and the roads, and where that might not fall in the jurisdiction of the county to take care of, the legislature. I would love to see us work with the city to try to repair some of those areas that are really falling apart.
All right. You have something to add?
No, that's fine.
Okay. I'm going to have two questions coming up, one for each of you really about the same issue, but phrased in a kind of a different way. I'll start with Ms. Young. I alluded to in my opening the situation that happened with Mr. Bennett at the beginning of his term, and the Republican, some of the Republican legislators challenging his standing. Did you support the move that those Republicans made at the time to challenge Mr. Bennett's standing on the legislature?
Honestly, at the time, I really wasn't that involved to that degree where I knew the specifics of what was going on. So, I can't say at the time that I had one position or the other. From here, I understand why. Neither party wants to lose power. Either party is going to want to have their votes and their decisions favored. So I understand why it was done. Whether or not I agree, I guess I see a bit of contention there, but I don't think that as a legislator he should have been blocked from making decisions. I can't say that I agree with that 100%. I understand the logic, but I wouldn't have personally made a big deal out of it as a legislator.
Understood. And then Mr. Bennett, if you want to respond to anything Ms. Young said, that's fine, but also my question around the same topic for you is, in terms of your position at the college, what do you say to people that do believe that might be a conflict of interest to serve in the legislature and work at the college?
Be honest with you, one thing I say is, if one person can make that much difference out of 15 people, then, so be it. But, I've also heard some rumors and some talk about, well, it's a no vote if he abstains. Well, that's no different than any of the other legislators being on vacation during those meetings, and those are all no votes. So it's no different, and probably our issues of the college comes up maybe twice a year, 3 times a year. That's about it. We'll stop there.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm going to start the next question, and we talked a little bit about it there a couple questions ago, but in your district, the northwest portion of the city, are there any specific district issues that you feel like you want to work on if you are successful in getting elected for another 4 years? Issues for you, Mr. Bennett, issues in the district itself.
Yes, some of the issues that have come up as I've been out door-to-door campaigning, and one of them is the Chet's Dry Cleaners, the old Chet's Dry Cleaners that's abandoned on the corner of Pulaski and State Street. Numerous people have talked about having that torn down. They say it's quite the eyesore because it is a corridor coming through the city into the downtown area. I'd like to take, and I've told the people as I've been out campaigning that after the rat race of campaigning and stuff, I will gladly and work with them, and we will get a petition up and take it to City Hall. And like Ms. Young stated before, the sidewalks and the streets need some taken care of down there.
And Ms. Young, same question as far as specific issues and what you could do in the
Yeah,
legislature?
I could not agree more. I live right near that building, so I walk by it anytime I go anywhere for a walk. So, I agree. A lot of the buildings and the houses are very deteriorated and empty. The sidewalks are a mess in many areas. So I would love to work with the city on improving the area structurally. In addition, I would love to see some more economic growth in the area. Route 38, if you're coming to Auburn on Route 38, you go right down State Street, and there's a lot of abandoned areas there as well where we could have small businesses. So whatever we could do to kind of stimulate the economy in that area, I think would be very beneficial as well.
Okay. One question that we were asking 2 years ago that was a lot more of a hot button issue, but it's still worth revisiting, is the Cayuga County nursing home consolidation, where the county worked with what was then called Mercy Rehab with state money to create a new entity essentially and consolidate. Residents moved out of the old county nursing home building on County House Road and into renovated facilities over at the former Mercy, now called St. Anthony's on the Common. And I give all that background to ask you this question, starting with Ms. Young. Did you agree with that decision to close down the county nursing home and consolidate in that fashion? And how do you think that project has gone so far?
Again, I'm in a position where I didn't follow that transition very closely at the time, just because of all the other responsibilities I have. From what I do know of it, I think that I probably would have supported it because from what I understand, it was a dramatic cost-saving measure. It would be a hard decision for me because I am a nurse by background and I understand and care for those residents and their families, and I'm sure it was a huge matter for them. So, again, if I had been more involved, if I had been on the legislature, had talked to the families, the residents, it might have been a different thing for me. So that's a tough one.
Understood. Mr. Bennett, how do you feel about it? You can tell us how you voted at the time and how you feel about it today.
Okay, back when it came up, I voted against it because we had numerous meetings out at the nursing home and talked to many of the residents and their families, and they were very adamant that they did not want the change. As a legislature, we had to take a look at to see what we were losing. I had asked that we could try to find some way to offset the loss that we were having out there to keep the residents there. Since then, I have not heard of any major complaints or anything from any of the residents or the employees that have transferred over to Loretto, over to the Common. So I believe it was, even though it was a tough decision at the time, it was the right move to make.
Understood. One of the big issues these days is the Owasco Lake water quality. Blue-green algae has obviously been as bad as it's been any year down at the lake this year. Concerns that it's starting to threaten the actual water supply that people use for their drinking water. My question to both candidates, and we'll start with Mr. Bennett, is what can and should the legislature do to turn this situation around?
I believe what the legislature should do is contact and keep pressuring our state, federal, and the DEC officials on some kind of education or penalties for anybody that abuses our lakes. But I would also like to say also that there are other waters of bodies of water within the county that we should recognize, even though they do not support the 50 or 55,000 people with their drinking water that are having the same issues. We have to educate the landowners and the farmers on how to handle their runoffs.
And Ms. Young, on Wasco water quality?
I do agree with that, partially. I think first the legislature needs to recognize that it's not one specific person or entity that's the problem. It's a variety of different issues that are going on. So we need to kind of take that approach and not just blame one group or one person. I agree with working with the towns and the villages of the watershed to educate those that might be contributing to the pollution, holding farmers to their best practice standards, maybe giving them a chance to at least be educated before we inflict fines and penalties. But I agree that if there's repeated offenses that they should be held accountable for that. And also I think it's going to take money for us to repair some of the damaged areas where there's soil runoff, erosion, nutrient loading. So I think that the legislature still needs to continue to work with the state, Mr. Finch and Mr. Nozzolio, and try to work with them to get funding and grants to help protect these waterways and these tributaries.
One thing that I imagine, if it hasn't come up already, will in the next few weeks as the budget's being looked at, is on those lines of agencies that work on water issues and environmental issues. The county gives a good amount of money to Cornell Cooperative Extension of Cayuga County, as well as the Cayuga County Soil and Water District, and there have been proposals in recent years to cut some of that money back in a time when you're looking at a budget that maybe you need to trim some cuts. Is that an area that you would be willing to cut back on? We'll start with Ms. Young and go to Mr. Bennett.
I think that's hard to say. It's kind of vague at this point without actually being there and examining the budget, examining line by line what we're spending on. But I think that the lake should be a top priority. So if there's room to cut for something that really isn't necessary, fine. But if the money that's going towards preserving our waterways is worth it on every line, then I say we do it. We need the lake. We need to keep clean drinking water for all these residents and keep it as a great feature of Cayuga County.
And Mr. Bennett, on those two agencies and their funding from the county.
Both those two agencies are not an actual part of the county. They are subsidized by the county. And if need be, and if we have to take and make cuts in them, then so be it. I would think that hopefully the soil conservation, the soil department and stuff could take and generate some more funds. They have gotten out of the cogen facility. Hopefully now they can start putting some resources some other places, as in towards the lakes and stuff.
Okay. Another issue up there at the lake, at the northern end of the lake, is Emerson Park, and the legislature just approved earlier this year a major update to the comprehensive plan, calling for some upgrades, some development projects there if they can generate some investment. My question for both of you, and we'll start with Mr. Bennett, is what 2 or 3 changes would you like to see happening first and foremost at Emerson Park, if any? And maybe your answer is it's perfect the way it is, but go ahead and talk a little bit about the park if you could.
No, first and foremost, I agree with some of the plans that they have up there. I believe a nice walkway and a bicycle trail through there, make it more family friendly, more user friendly. But I also do not agree on moving and having just one beach there. I believe the one main Emerson beach should stay as is the Deauville beach. I have an issue with privatization of a hotel or conference center there, and I was very disappointed that they did not honor or feel like they should honor any of our veterans from the Vietnam. I was very disappointed that they didn't want to put a memorial there. I'd like to see them expand on the boat sighting, the docking sites and stuff also to make it more friendly, user-friendly.
Ms. Young, thoughts on Emerson Park?
I think we definitely should do more with the park. I think it is a great place for families to go currently. It's one of the few places in the area that families can go that's actually affordable. My vision as a mother of 3 children is for us to have something similar to what Geneva has. They have like a spray park there. You know, for a family of 5, you can get into the park for, you know, a very low price and spend the whole day there. It's a great attraction. If we could clean up the beach there, or both beaches, you know, I don't know if I really have a position on that, but, you know, at least to have one beach that's clean that, you know, the kids can play in, I think that would be a great thing to have there. I have heard some residents say that they think there should be a hotel. I don't know that that's the best idea. I think that for the sake of our community and what we like to see happen there, I think most people would favor something that's more family friendly there. So, you know, that's just one idea I have for the area.
At the park, over the years, there's been some calls. The Emerson Foundation even at one point offered to subsidize this for a couple of years to eliminate the parking fee that's up there. Where do you stand, both of you, on the fact that there is a fee to park there, and obviously that money is collected and used for the park, but nevertheless, is it a deterrent to more people coming? So where do you stand on the parking fee? I'll start with Ms. Young on that.
I don't see an issue with the parking fee. I think it's at a reasonable price right now. You know, I don't think it's a deterrent. Again, as I just stated, I think it's one of the few things that people can do as families that's actually affordable nowadays. So I don't see an issue with it. I think that it's great that it goes right back into the park, so I don't see an issue there.
And Mr. Bennett on parking?
Parking, I believe the price is very reasonable. Even if we were to bump it a couple dollars, it still would stay reasonable, well within whatever the state parks charge and everything. And like Ms. Young said, that money goes back into the park for the maintenance of the facilities.
All right. Moving on, Mr. Young, the legislators, as I noted earlier, paid a base salary of $10,100. I don't know if you calculated how many hours you work on legislator business, what that comes out to as a hourly wage, but I'm guessing it's not making you rich. So my question is, what's your position on the pay right now for legislators, which hasn't changed in quite some time?
As far as I'm concerned, the pay rate is fine. You know, we have to lead by example. If we're asking some of our department heads to make a cut and stuff, I'd like to see some cuts somehow on ours. They're, you know, $10,000 is, granted it is minimal, but still, if I was in it for the money, I wouldn't be doing this position. You know, I'm there for the people, not for the money.
Ms. Young, on the pay, is that an adequate pay?
I actually agree with that as well. I think it is adequate. You know, for me personally, I'm already a volunteer. I've been volunteering my time for 10 years. So I'm accustomed to helping out at no cost as it is. So to take the opportunity to be on the legislature and represent the people and try to make good decisions for the county, I don't see it as something that I deserve a huge salary for. It's something that I really want to do, and I don't have an issue with the salary that's paid out to do that.
Okay. I'm going to ask you about the county administrator, Suzanne Sinclair, who's been in this position now for about 2 years and going through another budget cycle, obviously, but just asking both of you to evaluate the job that she's done from your perspective and follow up from there. But I'll start with Ms. Young on county administrator.
I actually had the pleasure of sitting down with Ms. Suzanne Sinclair last week. It was my first time I actually got to talk to her, and I had seen her at a couple of the meetings that I attended and was there when she proposed the budgets for next year. And I think she's absolutely wonderful. I think she's a very intelligent person. I think she's got a lot of potential for the county. So I think she's doing a great job so far. I hope to see her stay for a long time. I think that she could make a huge difference in this county. I know there's been, you know, some talk about what is her role versus what is the legislator's role and how do they interact. But, you know, regardless, I think we need to figure that out and keep her and help her to do what she's here to do.
And Mr. Bennett on Ms. Sinclair.
I believe Ms. Sinclair has done a very efficient job for the county. She did what we asked her to do last year. She brought us in a balanced budget, and it was a shame on the county, the legislators and stuff at the time, for not accepting what she was, it's tough to make the cuts she was offering. She said we had to make some employee cuts and everything. We just couldn't see doing it at the time the way the economy is. And I believe this year she's brought us 4 scenarios for the budget, and if we take a good hard look at it, we should be able to combine a couple of them and make it work.
Gotcha. For both of you, a question about your style as an elected legislator, because Ms. Young, you alluded to some of that give and take between the county administrator and the legislature, and what role does the individual legislators play in digging into things that are going on a day-to-day basis. How much involvement do you need to get in the details of day-to-day government when you're sitting on the legislature? Do you need to go up there every day and talk to employees and see what's going on and try to fix complaints that they bring to you on your own, or is there a different approach you need to take? So I'll start that question for Ms. Young and then ask Mr. Bennett the same thing.
Well, coming from the perspective of somebody that has not been in that position yet, I think it's hard for me to say until I'm actually there and kind of learning the different roles that I am going to take on. I think it's best to work with the people that are closest to the issues, so I would try to make it my priority to spend ample amount of time with the county employees to find out what they do, what they need, what current issues are. I think that is of utmost importance, in order for me to do my job appropriately. So I'm, definitely a people person and a problem solver. So I think that takes talking to the people that are actually doing the work day in and day out. So that would be the approach I would take.
And Mr. Bennett?
I believe that we're not there to micromanage any department heads or Ms. Sinclair. We're there to listen to the people, the employees, and the different department heads. And we are there. And I've taken and made rounds, talked to people. I've had meetings with people. People feel free to call me. They feel, as far as I know, they feel very comfortable of talking to me about issues and everything. So I believe that's the way the majority of the legislators operate up there also. There are a few that try to micromanage, but that's the way it goes. You're going to have it anywhere.
Gotcha. In terms of the legislature and weighted voting, where the system that's in place now, there's your district, District 10, probably has some of the fewest weighted votes on the legislature compared to a couple districts that have maybe 30 more votes than what you have. Do you believe that there needs to be some change the next time the opportunity is out there to recalculate our district lines in the legislature and get a more equal weighted voting system in place? And how would you go about getting that done, since it's not happened yet? We'll start with Mr. Bennett on this one.
I believe 2 or 3 years ago there was discussion throughout the state that they had to redistrict the lines, redraw the lines and stuff. And if we had to, I would even agree to or look into cutting down the amount of city legislators there are sitting and make it a little more equal as far as the weighted votes. I think that would be an issue. Currently we have, I believe 5 people from the city.
Right.
That, can we eliminate 1 or 2 possibly and make it more equal? Either that or go to a strict, just unanimous vote, 1 for 1, and that's it.
And Ms. Young, on weighted voting and potential changes there?
I think if the opportunity presents itself to somehow redraw the lines, I think that's the most fair thing to do. In our area alone, the amount of houses that used to have people and no longer do, even from the last time the lines were drawn, is probably a huge difference. So, I think a lot has changed over the county since the last time the weighted votes were calculated. So I'm not opposed to doing that. However, I don't see it as a priority at this moment for the legislature because there's so many other top issues right now that we're dealing with, from the lake to the issues with heroin overdoses in the county. So while I think it would be good to be done, I don't see it as something that we can really make a priority at this point.
That leads me to a question that I did want to ask about the heroin issue. We had a big rally in downtown Auburn over the weekend. to that issue. And legislators, everyone I've heard says we need to do something, but the question is what can you do? For both of you as county legislators, do you have any thoughts on how you can contribute to this battle that we're trying to fight in our community? We'll start with Ms. Young.
I have a lot of thoughts on it, actually. I am in full support of anything that we can do to, whether it's a crisis intervention or, I saw that the officers are now being able to administer Narcan in emergent cases where somebody's on the verge of death. So I'm in full support of that, but I also think we need to look at prevention. A lot of people turn to heroin because they're depressed or, there's nothing to do in the area. So I think we need to consider proactive ways to prevent heroin overdoses in the first place. So whatever we can do at the legislative level to support that, I'm all for it. I am a nurse, I work at the hospital, and every day we see, mental illness, drug overdose, and it's heartbreaking. And, as a mother of 3 children, I am willing to do whatever I can to support those that are suffering from it and to help prevent further cases.
Mr. Bennett, on the same topic.
I believe it was 2 weeks ago or so that the nation declared that heroin overdose was an epidemic for the whole nation, not just locally for states or counties or whatever. I believe we have a fairly decent, a real good mental health facility here that deals with it. And like Ms. Young said, we're fortunate enough to have some people that can administer Narcan and stuff to save some of these people. But throughout education and the support of our federal and state legislators and officials, we need a lot of help. There is a lot of help that needs to be done out there for it.
Okay. A question that I asked at the last debate as well, but it'll probably be similar no matter what happens in this election, where we're going to have a close divide between Democrats and Republicans in the legislature, and everyone has to come together and vote to elect a chairman next year. And traditionally, the parties have had those debates and made their recommendations or their choices behind closed doors in party caucuses. Do you think there's any reason to change that, or should that be changed in which we have it a completely open process? Or are you comfortable with caucusing behind closed doors and then making the decision after that takes place? We'll start that with Mr. Bennett.
To be honest with you, I don't think there's a way around of not having a caucus, whether it's called a caucus up at the county office building or if at a restaurant or something like that, or somebody's house where they get together. I believe it's going to happen irregardless of whatever. It's a shame that it does. It's too bad that the public doesn't have a choice on who it becomes the sitting chair.
And Ms. Young, on the idea of a caucus?
I think no matter what, it's going to fall to the majority. So, I agree. It's if the majority wants to meet and discuss it wherever they want, they can. Should it be more transparent? Yeah, I think it could be. I don't see the harm in letting everybody else know what's going on and who is being suggested for the chairman position. But the issue is that not everybody can do it. So while the full body of legislators might sit and talk about it and say who they think, it's going to come down to one, the majority, and two, the person that can actually fill it and actually commit to the time that it takes.
Okay, and I think we'll have one more question and then we'll move into some closing statements. And the question I have really after listening to both of you tonight is what makes you different? Because there has been a lot of agreement, which is fine, but for voters, where do you think you differentiate yourself from your opponent, and why you feel like you should be the one they pull the lever, or we don't pull levers anymore, why you should fill in the circle on election day? So we'll start that with Ms. Young and ask Mr. Bennett the same question.
Well, I think that I'm different because first of all, I'm very young and ambitious, and that's not to say that Mr. Bennett isn't, but I am very ambitious in everything I do. I work full time, I have kids, I volunteer, and this is just one more area where I'm really determined to make a difference. I like to get in and get things done, get things accomplished, and I believe that I can do that. and being a mother, a wife, a nurse, an IT professional, a volunteer youth director, all of those things I think have prepared me to take on another avenue of service to the community. So, I'm prepared to come in and do the best job I can to serve.
And Mr. Bennett?
Okay, I believe the difference is I have 4 years of experience, but also, like I said 4 years ago when I sat here, that irregardless of who or whom you are, you're not going to be able to come in and take off running right off the go. So that's one thing. But I too am a go-getter and a hard-working person. I volunteer a lot. There's many nights that it's 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock by the time I'm sitting down having dinner and stuff when I get done between working. Some of the volunteers I do, other boards and committees I'm on. So I feel that that's the difference, that where I have a little bit of experience, some experience at it.
All right. Well, that wraps up our questions for tonight, and we're going to now move into the closing statements. And because Mr. Bennett led off with opening statements, we'll have Ms. Young lead off with the closing statements, and you have up to 2 minutes for those.
Okay.
So, Ms. Young.
Well, I kind of already just went into it, but as somebody who spends most of her time serving already, I look at the county legislature position as another opportunity to serve. I can assure the voters that I will do my best to make this a priority in my life and, listen to the concerns of the taxpayers and do the best I can to bring change. I would love to see growth in the area. I would love to see more to do for families, for young people, to keep them off the streets. I may not have the experience. I may not be able to hit the ground running. However, Mr. Bennett was in the same position 4 years ago when he ran. He was also a newcomer to the office. And I appreciate Mr. Bennett's service to Cayuga County and specifically to District 10. However, I think it's time for a change, a new vision, and a new voice for the county. So I would appreciate your vote on November 3rd.
Thank you. And Mr. Bennett, your closing statement.
Thank you, Mr. Boyer, the Citizen, Cayuga Community College Telecom Department, once again for hosting the forum. In closing, as your current legislator and a lifelong resident of District 10, I care very much about what happens in the city, county, and legislative District 10. If I did not care about District 10, I would not have fought so hard 4 years ago to earn and keep my current legislative position. If I did not care, I would not be seeking another term. I'm humbled by the support of the people and voters I am receiving as I go door to door campaigning. I care very much about the residents of District 10, and that is why I'm asking the voters to support me on November 3rd and keep me as your legislator. Thank you.
Okay, well, and thank you both for coming out here today and answering some questions for the voters to think about as they make their decisions about who to support on Election Day, and for taking time out of your busy schedules. And of course, thanks for running, because on behalf of the community, it's hard to find a lot of people willing to run for office these days, because it's certainly a time-consuming and challenging step. And thank you at home for your support in watching these debates and for everything that you do to stay informed about issues in the community. These debates are replayed on Time Warner and Verizon, and you can get information on those replay times in the Citizen. A debate from last week, the District 4 contest between Mark Farrell and Chris Petrus in the town of Brutus, is scheduled to air tonight right after this forum, tonight on October 13th at the conclusion of this program on Time Warner Cable Channel 12. And as I mentioned at the start of today's program, we also have the debates posted to the auburnpub.com website for viewing at any time. And we have more forums coming up in the next couple of weeks. On Thursday, October 15th, look for the forum for District 8, Cayuga County Legislature District 8, which includes the towns of Venice, Genoa, and Locke. It involves Hans-Peter Petcher against Joseph DeForest. The candidates for County Legislature District 6 in Owasco and Senate will be here on October 20th. Those are Eileen McNabb Coleman and Joseph Runkle. And that's another Auburn race that will be coming up after that. On October 22nd will be the race for District 14 between Mike Didio, an incumbent, and Dominic Basile, the person that he actually defeated in the last election. Then the final week, we're going to wrap up on October 27th with the Auburn mayoral debate between Mike Quill and Tim Lattimore. Of course, that's the third time they've faced off. And that'll be followed on October 29th with the Auburn City Council candidates, Pete Ruzicka, John Camardo, Jimmy Giannettino, and Dia Carbajal. And thanks again for your interest in this year's campaign season, and please make sure you take the time to vote in the general election on November 3rd. Good night.